Counting values within cases in Excel and SPSS. Counting values within cases in Excel. Here in this Excel sheet, I had placed data extracted from multiple choice question exam paper, and 25 students had participated in answering 15 multiple choice questions. Each question have 4 possible answer options: A, B, C, D. So each question have 4 options to select from. If a student answered a question correctly, a value of 1 is inserted, and if a student answered a question wrongly, a value of 0 is entered. For student number 1 had answered question number 1 correctly, so a value of 1 is inserted, and the correct answer was option B. However, student number 2 selected option D, which is wrong, and thus a 0 value has been inserted. And this is the same for the rest of the questions. And to count the number of mistakes each individual student had made in the exam, i.e. to count any cell that have a value of 0 in it, we are going to use the count command in Excel. And the way to do that, if we type here and label a column count 0 or wrong answers, and in the cell below insert an equal sign, then type count and then and then select the count F command. In the count F command, we're going to select first the range of the data, and the range is all the possible answer options for all the 15 questions. Once those range is selected, a comma is inserted followed by the value of 0, as we are telling the software to count those cells that have 0 value in them. Then close the bracket and hit the enter key. A value of 1 is generated. This value means that only 1 question is answered wrongly by the first student. So student number 1 had mistakenly answered question 12 and selected option A, so a 0 value has been inserted. The correct answer was option B. So the first student had made 1 mistake, so he had 1 value of 0. To auto calculate and auto fill the rest of the students, or i.e. the cases here, select, drag and release. A value for each student is generated. Student number 2, as shown here, had made 9 mistakes. Student number 3 had made 2 mistakes, and student number 25 had made 8 mistakes, i.e. he have 8 cells that have 0 value on them or in them. The same thing can be done for counting the correct answer. In the column here, I'm going to type count correct, and in the cell below I'm going to insert the equal sign and then type count and select the count if command, and again I'm going to select the range for the data to input, and this will be the all multiple choice question answer option as selected here. Once the range of the data is selected, enter a comma, and then we are going to use the value of 1 as a criteria for counting the values that have number 1 on them. So the command will count only cells that have value 1 in them. So type 1, close the bracket, hit the enter key. A value of 14 has been generated. This value represents a 14 correct answer achieved by the first student. So the first student had answered 14 questions out of 15 correctly. To auto calculate and auto fill the rest of the value for the students or the cases, select, drag and release. Again, as we can see here, student number 2 had answered 6 questions correctly. The third student answered 13 questions correctly, and student number 25 or case 25 had answered 7 questions out of 15. So this is the way to count values within cases in Excel. In this video, we will learn how to count values within cases in SPSS. Here in this data view in SPSS, I had inserted a data taken from an exam paper answered by 25 students. So there were 25 participants answering 15 multiple choice questions from question number 1 to question number 15. Each question have 4 possible answer options or options: A, B, C, D. For question number 1, there is an option A, B, C, D, and for question number 2, the same, and 3, and so on. And for each question, a student answered the question correctly, a value of 1 is inserted. And if the student answered a question wrongly, a value of 0 is entered. For student number 1, he successfully answered question number 1, selecting the option B, which is the correct answer. So a value of 1 is placed. And for student number 2, he answered the question number 1 wrongly, so a value of 0 is placed, and he chose the option number D, so it's the wrong option. This is the same for the rest of the questions and the student. And to count the number of mistakes each student achieved in the exam, so we're going to count the values of 0 for each student or each case. And the way to do that is to click on transform, scroll down and select the function count values within cases. If you click on that function, a new window will appear, and in that window I'm going to generate a target variable, call it count 0, since we are going to count the number of 0 each student has achieved, i.e. the number of mistakes he had done in the exam. So then we select the data or the variable by clicking on Control A and then removing the student. Drag all these variables into the numeric variables, and then on the icon below the box here, click on the define values. A new window will appear which will permit counting the values within cases. So I'm going to select value. So I'm going here to ask the software, select this value which is 0 and count these values, and I'm going to add them into value to count or values to count. So what the software will do is to count how many zeros each student or each case had achieved. So if we click on continue and then OK, a new variable or a new column is generated called count 0. I'm going to edit the variable here by clicking on variable view, and I'm going to decrease the decimals into 0, and I'm going to decrease the width into of the column to 7, and I'm going to keep the value within the center of the column. So this variable indicates that student number 1 had 1 mistake, as he only had 1 0. And if we go through the scores achieved by this individual, we can see here he had answered question number 12 wrongly by selecting the wrong option. So he had achieved 1 mistake. Student number 2 or case number 2 here had made 9 mistakes. So he has 9 zeros in his data entry here. So each case has its own number or value, and this value represent counting the zero value achieved by each student. So the student number 2, he did 9 mistakes, number 3 1 mistakes, and number 25, the last student, had made 9 mistakes. So he have 9 questions out of the 15 questions answered wrongly. So this is the way to count values within data in SPSS.